It's beyond bedtime.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond Bedtime. I am your host, Stooge Carmichael. So we are excited to have our first ever sponsor. It's Sugar Slop, the fast food restaurant, and they just opened their first ever restaurant here on Neptune. Okay, the copy here has me taking a sip. Okay, so let me try one of these milkshakes. Oh God, what's in that? Methane? This is the worst milkshake I've ever had. I don't care if we keep them as our sponsor if that's what their milkshakes taste like. All right, well, back to the show. Today we have episode 3 of Nathan and Walter versus the Costume People. And, oh, that milkshake was gross. Okay, I gotta run to the bathroom. Just enjoy the episode. Bye. Nathan and Walter versus the Costume People. Episode 3. Showdown at Ambrosia. So we sit here as listeners and watch as Clark sits watching from his vent, and Nathan looks in desperation at his younger brother, and Walter considers joining the Costume People, and the Costume People look to wreak more havoc. And you, faithful listeners, must be asking yourself, to what end? Indeed. Why are the Costume People so troublesome? Well, I can tell you, it all has very little to do with logic, and very much to do with the orb of blue stuff, which is about as far away from logic as one can find themselves. You see, the orb of blue stuff is older than even the Nebotians, which means it is older than our entire universe, which means it is also older than space-time. But of course, and I want to be clear on this, nothing can be older than space-time, just as nothing can be newer than space-time. Things can be merely outside or inside space-time. They can or cannot be. Concepts of older and younger don't apply. I'm quite sorry. Simply saying any of this is enough to freeze my own brain into an icy nugget of confusion, and I'm the one saying it. All of this is to say, well, the orb of blue stuff simply makes no sense. And when it mixes with things, physical objects and the like, well, they don't make any sense either. They start to create havoc. So, with all that in mind, and ever so nicely cleared up, let us return to our heroes, our villains, and our yet-to-be-knowns.
"Come on, Walter,"
said Chester.
"bring me that blue orb. And the first thing we can do is make a can of whipped cream into a pal for you."
Whipped cream?
Said Walter.
I love whipped cream.
No, Walter, Clark said. They just want to make a mess of everything. Walter laughed.
Ha ha ha. Make a mess of everything? Well, that's exactly what I want to do too.
Walter had made up his mind. With that, he took the blue orb over and handed it to Chester.
"Good boy,"
Chester said. He then took out a spare can of Reddi-wip from his bag and put a drop of blue stuff on it. A moment later, it came to life.
Yippee!
Said the can of whipped cream.
Hello.
Said Walter.
What's your name?
My birth name is Fervis Blanc, but you can call me Whippy!
So, Walter, Whippy, Chester, and the costumes all left the room with the orb of blue stuff. Mr. Ratsker was still asleep. No, Clark said. We need to get that orb of blue stuff back. You, what's your name?
I'm Nathan.
Will you help me?
If it means getting my brother back, then yes.
Just as Nathan was about to leave the suspension room, Mr. Ratsker woke up.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
Oh, well, my brother, the costumes, and talking can of whipped cream.
What in the what? Sit back down now, or I'm going to double your suspension.
What?
Now! Nathan sat back down. Clark could only look in hiding from the vent. He didn't know what to do next. Meanwhile, Walter and Chester in the costumes had left the school and were moving quickly across the school parking lot.
Thanks, Walter.
Chester said.
Now, we're gonna need some more help. We're gonna need some more costumes. You know anywhere we can find some?
Oh, I know. Oh, the Costume Emporium.
You mean to tell me there's a store that sells only costumes in January?
Yes, it's perfect.
Walter said.
It's filled with costumes, and I doubt anyone will be there.
Walter was right. He and the costumes took an Uber ride from a very confused driver and arrived at the Costume Emporium. They snuck around back, not wanting to draw the attention of anyone in the store. Inside, the costumes all looked in wonder. There was row after row, aisle after aisle of costumes. Children's costumes, holiday costumes, Halloween costumes, party costumes.
Whoa!
Chester opened up the orb of blue stuff. Then he got to work. He started first with Ghostbusters costumes, then Guardians of the Galaxy costumes, then the Rock costume, then a separate Dwayne Johnson costume, then a John Cena costume, a Moana costume, the Rooster from Moana costume, Frosty the Snowman costume, Stranger Things costumes, which look just like Ghostbusters costumes, X-Men costumes, X-Women costumes, a pirate costume, a dragon costume, a dinosaur costume, a football player costume, 2 zombie costumes, a Frankenstein's monster costume, a Frankenstein costume, a Harry Potter costume, a chef costume, a Batman costume, an Indiana Jones costume, Angelica from Rugrats costumes, Huey, Dewey, and Louie costumes, Baby Huey costumes, and Huey Lewis and the News costumes. One by one, the costumes wiggled around and began to stand as life pulsed through their cheap cotton, fake leather material. These costumes, too, had gained life. They twisted and stretched and looked around the room.
Welcome, costumes, to what my friend Walter here tells me is a planet called Earth. This place is filled with nerds and squares, and also lots of lame things, not to mention plenty of things to break. I'd say it's totally ripe for chaos. The costumes cheered. Together, they all walked out of the Costume Emporium, passing a cashier who was made speechless at the sight, and walked across the street to the local Sugar Slop fast food restaurant. And it was filled with customers. A cashier leaned into her microphone.
May I take your order?
Ice cream, soft serve. Where is it?
Chester said.
I want a swirl.
Derek said.
Hey, Derek, just chill for a minute. Listen, ma'am, just tell us where the ice cream machine is.
What? No,
But Chester saw the machine and ignored the cashier, hopping over the counter and going right to it. He turned the pump on and stuck his mouth under the flow of chocolate ice cream. The Ghostbuster costumes decided to go swimming in the soda machine. Huey Lewis and the News danced on top of the fries. Derek knocked over a trash can. John Cena poured barbecue sauce into the ball pit. And the dragon flew around screeching in the ears of young children. Walter took his new friend Whippy and started spraying him everywhere.
This is the most fun I ever had.
Walter said.
Whippy!
Said Whippy. The fire alarm went off and water started raining down from the ceiling sprinklers. The costumes all cheered. The manager came out and shouted,
It's pandemonium in here!
Nathan. Clark had snuck out of the vent, around to the front of the suspension room, and got the ISS door opened. Mr. Ratsker had fallen back to sleep. Nathan, hey, come with me. Nathan double-checked to make sure the coast was clear, and then he left the room. This way, Clark said, as they snuck off to hide in a utility closet.
So, are you like an alien or something?
Nathan said. Yes, exactly. From the planet Nebo, not too far from here. But we have no time to get into any of that now. We need to get those costumes.
But how are we gonna do that?
I just need to get my ore back. Then I can fix all this.
You mean that glowing blue thing that Santa Claus was holding?
Chester, I think his name was. But yes, exactly. That's my orb. I lost it on accident, and that's what's causing all this trouble. Just then, they heard the doorknob jiggle.
Hey, unlock this door right now. I know you are in there, Nathan and Mr. Alien whatchamacallit.
Nathan shook his head.
He knows we're in here. I guess we'd better open up.
They opened the door.
Hey, Alien Man,
said Principal Goodman. Actually, my name is Clark Cocoplex.
I don't care what your name is. You need to tell me what's going on here. I have seen things this day that are simply unexplainable.
Do you really want me to explain all of it to you? Or rather, how about I just get to how we can stop it? Clark said.
Yes, just to how we can stop it.
Principal Goodman rubbed the sides of his head.
Ugh, I have a headache.
So, Clark said, Mr. What was it?
Goodman, and it's Principal to you.
Principal Goodman, those costumes have something of mine called an orb of blue stuff. I simply need to take it back from them, and all this trouble will go away. They won't be able to live without it, and they certainly won't be able to make any more costumes or cause any more trouble.
Okay,
Principal Goodman said. And we need to do it now, before things get out of hand. This young man, Nathan Carver, has agreed to help me, and I hope you'll agree as well. Principal Goodman looked to Nathan.
What happened to your brother, Nathan?
Well, he joined up with the costume people.
Walter!
Of course he joined up with the very villains causing so much trouble to our school. We have no time for this, Clark said. Come with me to my hot dog ship, and we will get the proper equipment to trap the costumes. Principal Goodman and Nathan followed Clark to behind the old billboard where his spaceship was hiding.
Such an inconspicuous billboard.
What you what?
Never mind.
Clark opened the trunk of his spaceship. He moved around a few packages of toilet paper that the Scion had forgotten to take out, lifted a cloth, pushed a spare continuum squeezer to the side, and pulled out what he was looking for. It was a loose netting that looked worse for wear. What? Oh no, Clark said. This won't do. This wouldn't catch a butterfly. Nathan said.
Let's go to my house. I think I have some stuff in my garage I can use.
Fine, said Clark. At the Carver household, Nathan opened the garage door. Loki, the dog, saw Nathan and Clark, and she barked at them from inside the house. Nathan rooted through the junk in the back of the garage and started throwing items. Some bags of dirt, a red wagon, a bag of beach toys. Then, he found what he was looking for.
Here it is,
Nathan said, pulling out a green kiddie pool.
This would be perfect for trapping some costumes. And these would be helpful too.
He pulled out a few bungee cords. Clark looked at all the items. A pool, a bungee cord, a tarp. Yes, Clark said. This just might work.
Now, let's go find those costumes.
Loki had been watching all of this from the door. Then, when Nathan wasn't looking, she snuck out and crawled into his backpack. These sorts of things always seem to be happening in the Carver household. Although Clark and Nathan didn't know where the costumes had gone to, this was not a problem, because the costumes right this moment were making their way back to bring life to the remaining costumes that Chester had left behind in the school auditorium. In the auditorium, Chester and Walter started lugging the boxes out from behind the stage when they heard a voice behind them.
Stop right there!
Nathan said. Chester and Walter looked back. It was Nathan, Clark, Principal Goodman, and Mr. Ratsker, who had just woken up from a nap and had been surprised to see all of his suspended students had left. "This ends now, Chester," Clark said. "Give me back that orb. Let these earthlings go back to their lives." While Chester turned to look at his accusers, he quietly passed the orb of blue stuff off to Walter and nodded to him. Walter put a few drops of blue stuff into the costume boxes behind the curtain.
I'm sorry to say, Clark Cocoplex, that I couldn't care much less about earthlings. They stuffed me away for too long. Now, as I have said, I am going to make things crazy.
"You are going to do no such thing," Principal Goodman said. "There are only 5 of them," said Mr. Ratsker. "We can take them." Using their newly built contraption of pool, tarp, and bungee cords, along with some mixed alien items from Clark's ship, they advanced towards the costumes.
Is that right?
Chester said.
There are only 5 of us?
Just then, a group of costumes appeared at one of the auditorium exits. A dinosaur, a pirate, and Huey Lewis in the news. At another exit was a French maid, an Easter bunny, and Lara Croft. Finally, behind them at the entrance were Sugar Slop uniforms, gray pants, red shirts, and green visors. They were all advancing towards Clark, Nathan, Principal Goodman, and Mr. Ratsker.
What?
Said Principal Goodman.
Where did you all come from?
Oh no, Clark said. It's already begun. They are expanding too quickly. Even though they were already outnumbered, even more costumes sprung free from the costume boxes in the auditorium. The Lost Boys from Peter Pan, Little Orphan Annie and her orphan friends, Minions and emoji costumes, Nemo from Finding Nemo. Walter stood next to Chester and held the orb of blue stuff.
I'll tell you what,
Chester said.
I know you want this here orb of blue stuff, being held now by my new best friend Walter. If Walter wants to give it to you, he is free to. If not, then, well, we need to move on, to expand.
Nathan and Clark looked at Walter.
He's bluffing.
Nathan said.
No, I'm not.
Walter, bring us the orb. Look how many costumes were created in just one day. This needs to end now, please.
Walter looked down at the orb.
Everyone
Walter said.
always tells me what to do. They always tell me to put on my shoes, go to school, speak up, don't run, be quiet, go to bed, and I'm sick of it. No, Nathan, you always tell me what to do all the time. This is serious, Walter. You're my brother, and I want you to stop this craziness and come home with me. I promise you we can figure all this out. Just bring that orb over here.
From behind a chair, Mr. Ratsker jumped out at Walter and tried to grab the orb. Give me that! Give me that now, you little scoundrel! He had a hold of Walter and the orb, but all the costumes jumped on top of Mr. Ratsker to pull him off. Mr. Ratsker was quite strong, but there was just too many costumes. They easily overpowered him. The Sugar Slop uniforms held him in front of Walter.
Walter,
Chester said.
Put a drop of blue stuff on him.
No, Clark said. You really shouldn't use that on humans. Walter looked at Mr. Ratsker. Walter never really liked him anyways. He opened up the orb and put a single blue drop onto Mr. Ratsker's head. Mr. Ratsker fell to his knees. Then, his arms started to move around. His hips wiggled, he danced, and then he laughed. Oh! His eyes started to spin like spirals, and his face was plastered with a wide, permanent smile.
Great,
Chester said.
a new recruit. As for the rest of you Earthlings, I suggest you leave now if you don't want the same to happen to you. Same goes for you, Clark.
Clark looked at Nathan. We better leave. There's nothing we can do at the moment. Let's go. Clark walked out, followed by Nathan and Principal Goodman, who simply could not believe what he had just witnessed. Outside of the school, a thunderstorm had begun, and it was raining.
What are we gonna do now?
Nathan said.
There are just too many costumes. And as long as I have that orb,
Hold on, let me think, said Clark. He remembered an envelope that the Scion had given him just before he left. He took the envelope out, which had read on the front, "In case of emergency." He opened it, took out the letter, and read it. He's alive, said Clark. That old waffle is alive. Clark started to run. Nathan, come with me. We need to get to my spaceship now. We need to get to the coast.
the coast? Where are we going?
Clark held up the letter and showed it to Nathan. There is only one man who can help us now. I mean Waffle. There's only one Waffle who can help us now. This is Stooge Carmichael. I hope you enjoyed that. Oh, my stomach. Anyway, Phlegm's gotta take me to the hospital. Never go to a sugar slop ever. It's disgusting. Bye.
It's the